Okay. So, Bobbie, as you know, we have several people who are inventors or going to be inventors or business owners, and we want to get right into it. How'd you get started in this? I read your bio, but what really lit your fire to say, you know what, there's a big void here about marketing and the mistakes people make. How did you get started?
It's funny. My own businesses started because my kids like to eat. 2008, the market fell off a cliff and the startup I was working with ran out of money. So not a lot of jobs. So I started my own business. I mean, I think of it as entrepreneurship under duress. You have
Good
no
one. Good.
choice but to create your own business and move it forward. Early on, back in the day, I was originally going to be a broadcaster. I have a broadcasting degree from Ithaca College and I worked in radio. Can you tell?
Yeah, I like that.
Uh,
I love that. Love that.
and I got into public relations and worked in PR for a number of years. But it was really the pandemic, or not the pandemic, but the Great Recession that started me down the entrepreneurial path myself.
Okay, like a lot of people that pivot. I'm going to ask everybody if they could to mute themselves and turn off their cameras for a moment while Bobbie and I chat. And I would like to encourage everybody to send in questions to the chat, and I will get to them as we proceed along. And I let more people in. So if you have a question, just put it into the chat, and I guarantee you we'll get to it before our hour is up. Bobbie, an inventor who's just been awarded a patent calls you on the phone and says, Bobbie, I just was awarded this patent. I only have a little money, and I've already made some of these, and I've sold a few, and I don't know what to do next. Do you tell them to call me, or do you tell them to call? What's your? Because you must get all sorts of calls, you and your
Mhm.
team, of different levels of help, right?
Yeah, I mean, we get everything from people who have an idea to very established companies. Our own Carlton PR marketing clients range from New England's largest distributor of ball bearings, which has been in business now for 65 years, to companies that are kind of fresh off the block and don't yet even have a product. And I think for the most of the clients, the first place is figuring out all the basics that you need for marketing. Who is your target market? What is the problem that you solve? Those are the first two things that I try to tease out of the conversations I have with entrepreneurs when they come calling. Without those two things, there's very little I or anyone else can do to help you.
When it comes down, we got that far, and we've called you, and you've said, okay, boy, you've met some of the things that you've done already. Say the entrepreneur who has built a little business around a patented product
Mhm.
and now has to scale when they're thinking about going into deeper into the manufacturing play or the
Absolutely.
licensing play. Can you help somebody maybe navigate if they're going the manufacturing way? What's that going to look like from a marketing sense?
And I will say that we have an embarrassment of riches here in New England, in Massachusetts in particular. I I was on the board for several years of an organization called Forge, and Forge is part of Greentown Labs. And their mission, they are a nonprofit. Their mission is to connect companies with a prototype with the right manufacturing to help them scale. And, at the same time, from a marketing point of view, there is no sense in manufacturing products or scaling products if you don't have a market for it, if you don't have a sales channel for it. So you do need to do the groundwork to determine if you have enough of a market opportunity to kind of turn that crank and turn on large scale manufacturing. I mean, I would hate to have anybody, especially a client of mine, sitting there with a garage full of widgets, whatever that widget is, or warehouses full of those widgets. The startup that I was working with in 2006, 2008 timeframe was a kids book company. We sold gifts and accessories. We had a 22 book series. We also had a fabulous website, and all of these things cross promoted each other. But there is nothing more heartbreaking than watching the pulping truck show up to your book warehouse to pulp all the books that you can't sell, that are costing you too much sitting in a warehouse. So, I just am very cautious about starting right in on let's manufacture something before we get that groundwork done, before we have a good understanding of the business model and how we're going to make money selling the product.
One of the things, um, and I want to get to, I know in our pre-conversation, timing of when you're brought in,
Mhm.
right? And we talked about it that the person that the marketing team and you want to keep the busiest is the bookkeeper, right? From
Yes.
right and like you just said, you want the bookkeeper to be putting in the overtime because you're having so many sales. But how does somebody know when to really bring you on? Is there any set, metrics that they've met certain things and now we need the marketing? I know you advise to a lot of companies that probably have raised millions and millions of dollars and they need, a CMO, and you're there to help them.
Yep. And I think that there are different stages of marketing and different amounts of marketing and different kinds of marketing that get applied. For example, one of the most important businesses a company, one of the most important decisions that a company makes is, what is the name of your product? Naming a product is actually part of the marketing function. Are you going to be, in addition to patenting something, trademarking it? Are you creating a website where people are going to buy your product? Is there a domain available for you that's related to your product? Can you grab all of the social media identities that go along with your company name? I mean, these are super early decisions, and I've been involved in naming a lot of products and naming a lot of companies as well. And it's not just a throw a name on it and run away type situation. You do want marketing input on it. You want to know everything from how does it sound on the phone to what else will be coming up when I Google the name of that product. So there's all kinds of things that you do very early on that you want to make sure are done right and done with a marketing partner in hand, or at the very least, an awareness of the marketing issues. We worked with a company, a person, an actual individual who had a product that had a bad word in the name. And we were trying to explain that many of the wire services would censor the name. So he couldn't put out a press release with the name of his product in the press release on most of the wire services. So that's kind of hampers your efforts at promotion of your product, don't you think?
Yeah.
So there's all kinds of early things that are, involved very quickly.
So in in let's just say in the inventing world, which we're all interested in, and so when you finally found that thing that you've done some research on and figure that, okay, I'm going to file my patent now. And, when you file your provisional, you get a year
Yeah.
to see whether if you have anything. And during that year, you're going to go back and forth with the patent office and, a little bit. And then you have to decide whether you're going to go for your full blown application or not. Important part of the year should be part with the marketing of what you just put out there. So this first year, the things that you just said about naming a product, seeing what's available for domains, is there a checklist that you go through with an early stage to see if there's something available like that? Because that's exactly the step that we go through with early stage, uh, because you're usually in for a few years tussle
Yeah.
with the patent office. And, especially when you go to file your utility patent or your design patent, it could be months and months and months before you hear back from them. But you can't not do anything until then. You have to keep going to start building your brand.
Hmm.
Um, Critically important, I think the point you brought up, Bobbie, was the naming of the product. The naming of the product, not just what it does, but how do you do that? How do you? How does your team sit down? You sit down and pick the brain of the creator and write down names and catchphrases. How do you do that?
Yeah, I mean, there are many different approaches to naming a product. It could be a descriptive name. So, for example, when I suddenly found myself on the street after the Beacon Street Girls ran out of money, my first thing is, okay, I have to throw up a shingle and I have to get myself business. What's the fastest way that I can get doing business? And it's using my name. And the thing I have of value is my name. People knew who I was. So, bingo, Carlton becomes part of the name. That helps the audience identify, that product. But I also made a decision in terms of naming my company that was search engine optimization driven. I called it Carlton PR and Marketing because what I wanted to do was target companies that needed somebody who had a foot in both worlds, who could deliver both public relations and marketing programs at the same time. And often you would see a lot of searches, or at least 13 years ago, you would see a lot of searches for people who are looking for public relations agencies that also did marketing, or marketing agencies that also do public relations. Guess whose company showed up for both? And, because the PR and marketing are both in the company name, it was also in the domain name. And at the time, I needed people to be able to find me in the Boston market. And so that is the domain I used, that is the name I used. And at the time, before I had quite so many referrals, that was how I accomplished my marketing. I put the names in both, and when people were searching for an agency that could do both things, they would come up with me. So, thinking about functional names, that's a functional approach. There's also the ability to garner your social media accounts. And sometimes that's really hard if it's a functional name or a real world name. You may have to go off and create a name. And if you're going to create a name, you need to be very careful that that created name in English doesn't say something bad in some other language. So, that's an approach, the
Very
made up
important.
name.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Bobbie, tell us, um, if someone asks you, give me an example of a public relations play compared to a marketing play. Because I think people, even myself early on, said, okay, well, is it the same? What's the difference between public relations and marketing? So if they were to, um, retain Carlton PR and marketing, you bring both expertise to it. But if
Hmm.
you get asked, say, look, we need, did the PR people and the marketing people work together? Because I know sometimes the marketing people and the sales people don't get along too well in
Yeah.
companies. How do you work that out?
I think that marketing and sales are often a little bit at each other's throats because it's marketing's job to deliver leads, but it's sales' job to close those leads. And unless you're working really closely, hand in hand, your definition of what a lead is as a marketing person could be very different in terms of the definition of what a salesperson considers a lead versus a name or an email address. So you have to be quite clear on how you're defining what an actual lead is. But let's go back to the initial question, which is the difference between public relations and marketing. Number one, public relations is actually a marketing function, it is part of marketing. And when I talk about marketing, I have an analogy I use. So to me, marketing overall is a circus. So the way that you define the different parts of marketing and the different kinds of marketing is by talking about a circus. So in the old days, there was an advance man who would go around the same route that a circus was going to take, these traveling circuses, and he would put up posters and buy billboard space and put ads in the local newspaper saying the circus is coming to town soon. They're going to be here in a month. Get ready. The circus is coming. And he would be working ahead of the circus. And because he was supplying the artwork to the local newspaper, to the billboard companies, putting up posters, you're buying the space for the newspaper, for the billboard. That's considered advertising. You are 100% in control of your message because you are supplying the message. You're supplying the artwork or the ad. Now, a little while later, the circus arrives in town and they parade the elephants down Main Street, back when they had elephants, of course, in the circuses. And if you saw an elephant on Main Street in your small town USA, gosh, the circus is in town, is
Yeah.
probably the immediate thought. That is a promotion or an event. You're creating a spectacle. And that spectacle, I'm going to say, is not completely in your control, knowing a little something about wild elephants. So if your event goes off satisfactorily, people go follow the elephants off to the big top and enjoy the circus. So that's a kind of marketing called a promotion. Now, the elephants get out of control. They rampage through town and they trample the mayor's flower garden before they are captured. The local newspaper writes a story about it. All right. This is news. It's kind of marketing, but really not. You're not in control of what a newspaper reporter writes, it is out of your control. So you're also not paying for that story. It is being written because you did a promotion and something happened. As a PR person, it was always my job to put a positive spin on it. Go to the mayor of the town, get him to say nice things about the circus. Nobody was hurt. A few flowers were trampled. Let's all go off to the circus. That's PR. That is controlling the public's perception of an event. It is usually dealing with the media. Media relations is actually a part of public relations. So, again, these are all part of visibility driving marketing. One more thing has happened recently, which is the advent of social media. And social media marketing is another thing that happens. So to me, social media is as if we gave every single person in that big top tent a megaphone and said, have at it. One person's yelling about the elephants, somebody else is yelling about the popcorn, somebody else is like, oh, look at the ringmaster. Oh, look, trapeze. Like, it's just this absolute din. But if you could control that noise and all of those messages, you are doing marketing. And it's very similar a lot of times to the work that I did as a public relations person, which is basically attempting to control the message. So that's often why you see social media marketing tucked in underneath public relations departments. And again, all of the stuff is marketing programs. And these days, so many new things. Like in the old days, your marketing department was probably in charge of advertising, public relations, marketing programs, pricing, placement. Like there's a saying, the 4 P's of marketing. So placement, promotion, pricing, and what's the fourth one? Placement, promotion, pricing. So, these are the things that you're doing as part of a marketing function, which is connecting your product and your company with an audience.
How could it ever be possible that an entrepreneur, say two founders, and maybe the new warehouse person, and you've started to build out a team, how could it ever be possible that people with limited knowledge of what you just mentioned, all of those facets of it, possibly be able to do it in some cohesive manner, especially if the inventor just created something that nobody else has seen? That they said, I just figured out how to bring water up the hill without a pump or anything like that. How is it they're never going to be able to do that? At least I don't think they're going to be able to do it. What's the hardest part about convincing of when to bring on a pro? When is that? Is there a golden time about waiting too long? How is that? How will they know? How is somebody going to know that, saying, we need help to do this?
Yeah. I mean, a lot of entrepreneurs kind of get a little bit in over their head. I mean, I didn't mention anything about websites or search engine optimization or pay per click marketing. Yeah, like these are all additional marketing programs. Maybe you're going to do a weekly or monthly newsletter through email. Maybe you're going to buy lists. I mean, marketing is huge. It's like, would you want to go off and do your own bookkeeping? I don't.
No,
Okay. Would you
I
want to
mean,
be doing, if you're building a technical product, do you want to be doing your own website or your own technical development? No, these are very specialized things. So, getting an expert in to do marketing, fully admit I am completely biased because I see the complexity of it. At the same time, most people go, oh, it's marketing. I can do that. I mean, I can create a logo. I've seen companies that create their own logos. Oh, and never ever consider all of the different uses that a logo has to be good for. Like I've
right,
seen these really long, skinny logos, and I'm like, that's not going to fit, or you need it to fit on your website. Or every time you use it in a big crowd of logos, it's going to be teeny tiny because it's long and skinny. But if you stacked it, it would be much easier to use. Like there's all kinds of stupid little things like this. And I think any of us can educate ourselves about anything. There are great resources available online. But the key is, how much time do you have in your day? Do you have enough time to be your own marketing person and to educate yourself? Because, there are books. Like, I have books. Like, there are books that teach you how to do these things. I went to college for it. I have people who went to college for it and have many years of experience. But it literally does come down to how many hours you have in a day.
Right.
Yes, you can absolutely start small. And I recommend it. You're going to need to start bringing in some revenue in order to pay people to do all these things for you, or you have to do them yourself. Great ways to get started exist. And right now, there are lots of tools out there that make it easy, or conversely, spend a lot of your money. For example, Google AdWords. Anybody can go into Google and set up an AdWords campaign. AdWords is basically those little tiny ads that you see at the top of any search result. It actually says on it, sponsored or ad. That is a Google AdWords. Somebody somewhere set that up. And the use of Google AdWords is kind of terrifying to me because people they put their credit cards down. Here's an example. All right.
Okay, good. I was going to ask
I
you.
was going to say, here's an example. I had this consulting client at one point who called me up and they wanted me to tell them about pay per click or Google AdWords. I'm like, sure. And they said, well, can you come in and take a look at our campaign? Because we've been running this campaign for a year and we haven't received a single customer from it. And I said, sure. You need to give me access to your account and things like that. So I came in, had a meeting with them, and during the meeting, they gave me access to the account. And by the way, I had given them a package. It's like, here's a consulting package. It'll be $3,000 for me to spend X amount of time doing this, doing that, doing this. So in the meeting, they gave me access, and I opened up the account, and I said, "Oh, there's your problem." I said, "You don't need to pay me $3,000. I'm going to tell you your problem right here. What you have done," and this is at the time, these things change all the time, is they had done something called opening up the Google Content Network. All right. This meant that the ads they were placing were not just appearing on Google, they were appearing on other websites. This was a company that sold, get this, it's a little complex. They sold branded credit cards to banks and small credit unions. So in other words, if I'm the Bobbie Carlton credit union,
Yep.
I could have the Bobbie Carlton credit card. And I would give that out to all of my customers, and all of them would use the Bobbie Carlton credit card. And oh, by the way, when they use my Bobbie Carlton credit card, I would get a portion of whatever they were spending. So this is good business. I mean, I don't know how many of you know this, but when you spend money on your credit card, there's a whole bunch of people that take a tiny bit of the action.
Yeah. Oh,
Like 20 different people get part of that. If it's MasterCard, MasterCard's getting part of it. Your bank's getting part of it.
Yep.
Whoever sold it to the bank, the deal, tons of people are getting this money. All right. This is what this company sold. They sold branded credit cards specifically to credit unions. Their target market was the CIO for a credit union, or maybe the CEO. But by opening up the Google Content Network, they said to Google, you choose wherever this ad is going to appear, Google, because you know better than we do.
Oh, boy.
So their ad had been appearing for a year on MySpace. And I said, there is no way that the CIO of a credit union is going to be looking for a professional partner for their branded credit card on MySpace.
Wow.
Thank you very much. They had spent $17,000 on that.
There's no, I would
It's
say
not.
there's no coming back from that, but that's a hard lesson to learn
It would have
when
been even worse if I had charged them $3,000 to tell them that.
I know. Well, that's a great story of, like, in our world. Let's say our world again, the inventor world, where resources are limited. You've probably just spent, maybe five figures to get your patent, right? And now you get to the point where maybe you've had enough money to make a few prototypes and do a short run of maybe 500, 1,000 of your widgets. And you did okay. You sold them for $10, and you can take that information now and see to build on it. When you bring somebody in and you have to kind of debrief them about where they are and what they've done so far to sort out kind of the fog of somebody where they're going to go with the product. And I know with inventors, we have a tendency to think that we know better than a pro about where our product should go and things like that. How do you get by that sometime of somebody wanting to then invest in that? Can there be marketing done early on to give that inventor or something, give that inventor either, gee, this might have legs, or maybe this is not going to have legs with this product? Is that
And I,
possible?
yeah, and I think the internet has made so much more possible than ever before. You can find the right groupings of people. For example, say I'm going to sell my poster, okay, my Minion poster behind me. So I can go and I can find groups, appropriate groups who might be interested. So I've got target market on the mind. So let's think a little bit about some of those target markets. It could be people who love posters. It could be people who love Minions. It could be people who are big fans of
Yeah.
Universal Studios. It could be people who are interested in movie posters. And so if you have a collection of potential target markets, you can find groups on Facebook, Reddit groups. You can, like, there's so many different ways that you can connect with a community who could potentially be interested in your product, that give you the ability to test whether there's interest. And a lot of these organizations will allow advertising. You have to be very careful, though, with some of these groups not to go in and go, buy my product. Generally, what you're going to do is you're going to offer them some sort of value add. I'm going to tell you the story of Minions. I'm going to offer you free stickers. I'm going to say, I'd love to get your feedback on my Minion poster. There's all different types of way to engage with a community before you ever sell them anything. And when you sell them something or you start talking to them about a product, often you can get a lot of feedback about why people buy or don't buy if you engage with them through social media. They are very verbal.
Well, not to date myself or anybody else, but before the internet, and then let's go for it. Let's
Test
mix it.
marketing.
Let's mix. Well, focus groups.
Uh-huh.
Before now is the internet is the focus group. So
My
um,
first job in Boston, when I moved to Boston in 1986, I worked for First Market Research. And that's what First Market Research did, is we did focus groups and we did intercepts. I spent a lot of time in Boston's downtown crossing with a clipboard. Yeah, we also had a team that would go out and do product sampling to get people's feedback on things. Or we would put a people in a room and look at them through the one-way mirror where they talked about their products, and more often they just talked about their problems. And then we had to make the leap about whether our product would solve the problem.
If I bring you the product
Mhm.
and I ask you, Bobbie, I have this,
Yeah.
and you would say, okay, the
What does it
value,
do?
bring in seven, eight people,
Mhm.
and you craft the questions about it. What would you pay for this? What would you
It's a
pay?
useless question.
Okay, so what are the questions you would ask? What would somebody want to craft for? What's the questions people should ask about their products?
What problem do you currently have? That is probably the biggest question you should be asking. Why would, if you're selling a belt, why do you buy a belt? To keep your pants up. It's like there are all these different problems that products sell. And a lot of people create products before they truly understand what the problem is that someone is trying to solve. And it's not just complex technical products either. Everybody buys products for a particular reason. You buy the candy bar because you're bored, not necessarily because you're hungry in the checkout line. All of these things are merchandise to be attractive, and you have to like make sure that you're matching the product to what the person is feeling, what they are trying to accomplish. Maybe it's a status symbol. Maybe it's not solving an actual problem, but it could be that the problem this product is addressing is that the person feels lonely, or they feel sad, or they don't feel loved. I mean, there's so many different reasons that people buy stuff. And you have to figure out what those problems are and how your product addresses it better than anybody else's. So I
We
will.
want to get to. Thank you for that, because that gets me to the kind of the next one about a lot of inventors when they solve a problem. It might have been just for themselves they just
Oh,
solved it.
yes.
It's not. They go, wow, this. How many people would buy? What? Boy, this helps my life a lot easier. Maybe it'll help a lot of other people. When's the turning point that you're sitting in a room and that you had to tell someone that maybe there's only five people in the United States that will find that to solve their problem? How does
Yeah.
that conversation go?
Well, we talk about size of target markets. Talk about size of addressable markets, and we pretty quickly can zero in on whether there is a sufficient target market for a problem. I usually tell people over the years through Mass Innovation Nights, I helped launch more than 1,500 new products. I mean, I
We were
gotta tell
one.
you,
Kettle
yeah,
Pizza was one.
I saw almost every kind of product that you can imagine. Everything from complex medical devices to grandma's sauce came through our doors. And there were products that I would look at and I would be like, I don't get it. I really don't get it. And I would never tell people that their babies were ugly. All I would say is, I'm not the target market for that. Tell me more about your target market, because I'm a middle-aged white woman mother in the suburbs type. It could be that I am not looking for a new way to make my rollerblades move faster.
Right.
It's just not my thing. So you have to find out, what are ancillary products? How are people solving the problem now? Like, what are they purchasing now that isn't doing the job? And how will your product improve upon that? There's a lot of digging into these things that really goes into it. We had We had somebody who showed up at innovation nights with fuzzy iPhone covers. And I'm like, I don't get it. I'm not the target market for that. I do not want my iPhone cover to be fuzzy. But evidently, lots of other people did. I don't know how particularly successful that one was, but I know it was around for a while. Yeah,
Well,
there were lots of products like that.
well, especially with companies, I mean, profitable sales. You can have a lot of sales, but again, the the point, when I'll go jump back a little. Pricing a product is an important part
It's an
of
art form.
an art form. Are you one of the artists that can help them with that?
We have people that specialize in it. I do it in a small way.
Yeah.
Um, and, I've always said that you have to build in not just your cost of materials, not just your own paying yourself, but you also have to figure out all of the ancillary time and expenses that are involved with creating a product and bringing it to market. Sit down and list out everything from the trips to the manufacturer to check the prototypes. I have so many different expenses. You also have to build in your marketing budget. And, can you create a project that is in the price range that is appropriate to the product? It's like, I really can't sell that $17 wad of bubble gum. It's hard. So, sometimes you're going to have to get to the point where nobody will pay it unless you're manufacturing in sufficient numbers to get your per item cost down.
Bobbie, I want to touch on something that, okay, pre-pandemic, during pandemic, now post-pandemic. You
You hope.
know,
Knock on
we
wood.
hope. But let's go to because a lot of inventors get encouraged or to attend a trade show. And they go to a trade show. Let's call next week as the National Hardware Show. In fact, it's this week. The National Hardware Show. And you spend some money to get your booth and get your product there. I
Do
know you're
not
shaking
go
your
there.
head, and this is very good.
Don't go and spend money for the first time you go to a show.
All right, this is why I want you to share this with the people, and they can tell a whole bunch of other people. Because by the time you know it, you've spent five figures on room, eating, your booth,
Travel.
travel. And one of the things that we learned with Kettle Pizza is how important it was to you're in a convention center that could fit the town of North Andover in it, and you're hoping someone walks by your booth at the right time, which is, like hitting the lottery. Um, but you have to do all that pre-show marketing to get people to your booth. So I just wanted to touch on that for a second because in our world we always get, well, you should come to the trade show and we'll pre-market. Do you see the trade shows fading into there's going to be there's always going to be trade shows. At what
I think,
point does somebody go
yeah.
to a trade show?
I think that trade shows are like a lot of different marketing forms. You have to find the right one that fits you. For example, if you look at things like Toy Fair is a great trade show to go to if you are looking to license your product. If you are looking to connect with buyers for toy stores, mom and pop, but you want to go in the door, actually having all these appointments set up. So you need to know exactly who it is you're targeting. All right. If I'm going to go to Toy Fair and come back with Target and Walmart as new clients, bet you anything I went to that event with existing relationships already. I started talking to them well before the event. I did not meet them randomly on the trade show floor. And oh, by the way, if that's the case, what do you need to spend all that money on a booth for? What do you need to do more than just say, "Hey, you're going to be in New York for Toy Fair. I'm going to
Yeah.
be in New York for Toy Fair. Let's go have coffee. Let's meet up. Let's talk turkey. I'll bring a sample or two with me."
Right.
I don't agree that, there are some very lovely opportunities to get yourself early on into pavilions. A lot of the trade shows now have startup pavilions, which are great for early startup organizations. Or maybe your manufacturer has a pavilion and they are bringing a whole bunch of products to that show, including yours. Maybe you've got a distributor that's going to one of those. And those people already have the relationships with the channel partners that you need. So I'm not a big fan of like, let's go to the trade show immediately upon manufacturing our first product. I do think there are great local events. Like there are companies that have done great local products that started off selling at craft fairs and started off selling at farmers markets. They're getting their product in front of customers. They're engaging with direct consumers. A lot of the trade shows are not direct consumers. There's some type of a distribution channel.
It, and I want to take it back two things. Back to we had a question about innovation nights, mass innovation nights, and I think I was the second year I had it. I think you had it. We in Waltham,
Mhm.
and I remember I was off in the corner, and it was a very small space. And I don't know, it could have been the second one that you had, but we were there. But it provided at least me some very good information from people seeing the product, that interaction face to
Yeah.
face. I could tell them about it. They could tell me, they say, oh, they love to cook pizza. So good intel like that. Have you ever had to have the conversation with the founder or something like that, that he or she might not be the best one that uh, puts themselves out there for the marketing
Absolutely.
play?
Yeah, and we work with a lot of founders who may not be the best at telling the story of their product. A lot of founders are very enamored with their products. Like love them to death. They don't see uh the the issues, and they don't accept input well. When I worked for the Beacon Street Girls, I actually like we did some focus groups with a group of kids. And my boss, the founder of the company, the creator of the Beacon Street Girls, would be like, "Now don't you just love this cover on this book?" I'm like, "Do not put words in their mouth. Like that's the last thing you want." And it was also very hard for her to hear criticism of the product. So having a third party, whether it's, an employee who can be objective or a third party who is objective, is a great way to get feedback on your product. And I
Okay.
also think that they are less likely to be leading the conversation, which is what happens in a lot of market research and focus groups.
Okay. I'm going to ask everybody here in a minute to come back on as we get to some other questions. But, um, and we talked about this before, hits and misses. Products you looked at that you thought, I don't know if anybody will ever buy even one of these, never mind a million of these. So if you had some slide through that you said, I don't get it. Like you said, I don't get it. And then it becomes a hit. And then is it by accident they become hits? What happens?
Yeah, I mean, over the years, so many products came through Mass Innovation Nights. And,
Yeah.
there were some technical products that I saw. And obviously, being as involved in the startup community, I saw a lot of products. And sometimes I can't even tell which ones came through Mass Innovation Nights and which ones didn't. They all kind of merge in my mind. There were a few products that I looked at and went, I just don't get it. One product, which was more of a service, was a company called TaskRabbit. And TaskRabbit was like an errand company. And, you could basically call up a TaskRabbit, through the website, and somebody would show up and assemble your IKEA furniture or go and deliver a thing to a place. You know what? TaskRabbit moved out to California, became hugely successful, and was acquired by IKEA. Okay, never mind. There was also somebody who had a star-shaped business card. All right. And you folded the tines of the star down, and when you handed the business card to somebody, it would kind of bloom. And it was like, he was like, it really stands out. It makes people remember you. And you can like put your marketing messages on all the little star shapes and stuff. And I'm like, okay, that's interesting. And it was one of our early Mass Innovation Nights. And over the course of the evening, like 4 different people came running up to me with the little star business card. Look at this thing. This is the coolest thing ever. And I'm like, really? That's like all of these products here. That's what you're excited about. Now, have you ever seen a star-shaped business card?
I have not.
Neither have I.
I have not.
I stand by that one.
You stand by that one.
I stand by that one. There was also a guy who showed up a couple times. Product called Memory on Hand. It was a rubber bracelet with a thumb drive, and it basically hooked around, and you had a bracelet. Andrew and the Memory on Hand people did great for a long time. But the problem was it was really a product that you could buy very cheaply from China. It was a hard one to kind of keep ahead of everybody else who was doing some kind of bracelet thumb drive. But the big thing for Andrew and his company is they got distribution into all of these university bookstores, and they had a little display in hundreds of university bookstores. So it wasn't so much the product that made them successful as it was their distribution channel. Now, obviously, pandemic, what happened to all the university bookstores? Not so good.
Yeah, not so good.
Not so good. So, like different things are impacted by environmental factors.
Absolutely. I'd like to have everybody please join us. Let us see you again. Unmute yourself. I have a couple of more questions that people have sent in for Bobbie. So please feel free to put your cameras on. I did it. I think I did it the meeting, the last meeting or the meeting before. I signed off everybody and never let everybody put their cameras back on. So I just kind of and Lexa certainly I threw myself on my sword for that one. I said, okay, everybody, thank you very much. Have a great night. I cut the meeting off and I didn't get everybody to come back on and say hello and say goodbye and things like that. So, Bobbie, one of the things that we always try to do at Invent New England and other places that, I want to thank you. I want to let everybody know this is going to be available in a couple of days on inventne.com. Bobbie Carlton and Carlton PR and Marketing. Please go to a website, get more information. I read one of the bios of you, Bobbie, and said, and I know this said it was an old one, but I want to find it here. You were referred to And you're laughing already, so I
Yeah, I
know
know where
that
this is going.
yeah, you know where it's going. Now, it wasn't me. I'm reading this, so don't
I know it is
messenger.
not
This is
you.
marketing. Were you ever referred to as the godmother of marketing? Was that true?
No, it's Boston's. So there were two things. One of them was Boston's startup fairy godmother. And then the other one was Boston's innovation den mother.
Den mother.
And I
Okay.
was like, when did I go from being the hot mama to the den mother? Like, what
I want you to
happened
know that
here?
I didn't write that. I did read it from
No, it is
one of
not.
the
I know where it came from. It was Bostino and the BBJ.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
and I know Kyle Patsy, who was the original writer for Bostino, actually came up with that. And I was like, really? He's like,
That-
yes, it fits. Like
yeah,
everybody
it
comes to
fits.
you. I'm like,
Um, I just anybody else, please, if you have a question for Bobbie, I don't know.
or
You,
tell me about your products.
yeah, if anybody wants have a question, tell her about a product. Certainly, you know how to reach her now with her website. Um, I think that's the Innovation Nights is a cool one. Kettle Pizza went to that one many times over the years to get some valuable input, and you get a chance to have your product out there. Um, Bobbie, one of the things too that people have been asking us about is that as people come out of the pandemic, right, and you get back to in person events, you and I talked about this a couple of months ago. Um, how much does that mean more to people to get back to that personal connection?
Oh, this is a hard one because the minute the vaccines were announced, people were reaching out to me going, when are you going to hold your first in person event? I mean, we're talking like a year ago, more than a year ago.
Yeah,
The first shots had not gotten into arms, and people were going, when? I was not in any particular hurry to go back to in person events because I'm a little bit cynical about the whole thing. I did not see that we were going to be all comfortable going back to in person events. And just so you know, I'm a PR person. Super spreader is a bad look.
yeah. You don't want that tag to your event.
Right. You don't want to be Biogen right now, right? No.
Right, right,
I mean,
exactly.
literally, it's not a good thing. And if you're doing events, especially like for Mass Innovation Nights, we had events from 200 to 700 people. Like that is a potential super spreader, even at the small end. And, like let's think about Mass Innovation Nights positioning with sponsors. Sponsors were more of the New England's largest tech companies. Microsoft, Google, IBM all sponsored Mass Innovation Nights events where they would actually host our in-person event in their beautiful offices. And we would bring in hundreds of strangers who would stand really close together and touch their stuff.
Right.
Again, not the best pandemic positioning. So I have been ultra conservative about even the thought of going back. I'm just starting to entertain the thought. And oh, by the way, I run events and marketing. It's going to be a while from thought to actual thing. And I'm going to be slow to it. Number one, I am uncomfortable asking my team to put themselves out there when potentially one of them could get sick going to work. We've all been working remotely. Now, all right, that diatribe out of the way. In person, yeah, I think it's lovely. It's fantastic. It's like I miss people too, even though I'm an introvert. But I will say that the technology tools and our use of them have come light years from where we were at 2 years ago. And there is a class of people who suddenly are able to do events because they can do them from home. And when I say a class of people, frankly, I'm talking about a lot of women. All right. Women are more likely to turn down speaking engagements. I know this, as well as the less likely to attend events because they're more likely to be working part-time. They're more likely to be working for smaller companies. They're still more likely to be responsible for kids in home. It's hard to hop up, jump in your car at 5 o'clock at night when people are expecting dinner, uh, to go to an event. If you've got children, if you are picking up from school and daycare, there's all
Right.
kinds of things that make it harder to get out. But you know what? I can sit here and do an event and connect with people very easily electronically. So virtual events and hybrid events are here to stay. And I think there's going to be a lot of back and forthing. You know what? I ran events in the Boston market for more than a decade. Over each winter, there was always the, should we cancel because there's snow coming? Should we not cancel? 137 in-person events. I only canceled once, and it was a mistake because the snow never came.
Ah,
Like,
yeah.
people were calling me all day long. Are you going to cancel? Are you going to cancel? It says it's going to snow. Are you going to cancel? I'm like, I don't see no snow. But in the end, we canceled because people were driving to get to our events an hour or more each way. And again, I didn't want to be responsible for somebody, in a ditch in the snow somewhere. So I canceled it. In the end, literally flurries.
We struggle now that we're tied in. When you say that everything's changed now, inventor groups. I could never sit in on groups in San Diego or Texas or Florida
Yeah.
like this events that we do now have that chance to do with groups all around the country. Um, One of the things that we found that we're tweaking to do is that our groups, Invent New England, we would have every other month an opportunity for members to pitch their product to kind of like seasoned inventors in a closed environment. We would meet at Bob Hosline's house, and everybody sign an NDA, and we would record it, and then they would have the recording to look back on. They got, I think it was 15 minutes, 10 minutes, and 5 minutes questions, and
Yep.
we kept it pretty regular, and it was invaluable to get people's feedback right there when you were showing them this thing that maybe they said, I don't know if that's a good idea. You should go much more on that. And you really research that if that hasn't been done before. So I think you're absolutely right with the hybrid events because there's still a big need for people to get some sort of input on that early stage idea or business idea from somebody they can trust. So I absolutely agree. Our May 5th event at the iHub, um, which is going to be a hybrid, so
Mhm.
we can show people to be part of the meeting if they can't make it, and certainly be in person. But
And
I
I would
definitely
also
agree with you.
recommend that anybody looking at hybrid events, make sure you've got somebody producing the online aspect of it. So it's not just a set it and forget it kind of thing.
Right.
You want to make sure that the online people have a good experience, that they're all also able to interact, that somebody is monitoring the fact that they're asking questions, that the audio is good, whatever it is, just make sure that the online experience, um, one of the producers that I talk with says that his philosophy is online comes first. If there's questions, he goes to the online group first. He goes, he wants to make sure that they understand that they're important too. And a lot of times people will set up a camera, hook it up to a Zoom group and just walk away.
Yeah.
And then there's no interaction. And we have all these fantastic tools. Like, we can do breakout rooms. Like, I don't know about you, but the number of times that I've been to a physical event and I've ended up in the hallway having a conversation with two people. Like, you can
Right.
do that just as well online as you could do it in person
Right.
through the use
Right.
of
Yeah.
breakout rooms.
I think that I've been involved with very many now with the breakout rooms. It's great because you get four new people, or five new people, or 10 new people, and then 8 minutes later, you got everybody's different again. Wonderful. I got one question here. Is it possible to successfully market your product only using Facebook?
Depends on the product, depends on the audience. I mean, I think it is, but do you really want to build a community and an audience that you don't own? Facebook changes its algorithm and you're out of luck. Like, there are a lot of people out there that have built whole businesses on the fact that their website comes up first in the search results on Google. Google changes its algorithm and all of a sudden you're at number 27 on the second page. And there goes your business right out the door. So Google has a number of times changed its algorithm, changed how it handles groups, changes how it handles pages. There are a number of businesses that have actually sued Google because they spent all this time and money creating communities on Facebook, only to find that Facebook changes things and all of a sudden it's not so valuable anymore. So sure, you can create it. I mean, there are lots of businesses that are just on Facebook or just on Instagram or just on Pinterest. If it's the right audience and your audience is there, sure, have at it. But just be wary of the changes that these platform owners could be asking and doing.
Our last question here, we is it
John's also got his
so
hand
many
raised.
with so yeah with so many social media options. Any suggestions where to start? Did that go back to your product again, or is there some products better suited for
Hello, TikTok.
Instagram?
um, I'm a fan of social networks because they do give you a lot of flexibility to drive people to your website. Um, for example, I relied almost exclusively on Twitter when I started Innovation Nights. Innovation Nights originally was called a tweet up. We only used Twitter originally. And that was because it was one of the places that was doing social networking that was not heavily reliant on images. I am not a particularly good photographer. And I know a lot of people get really into photos on Instagram and stuff like that. That was just never me. I like the text, I like words, I'm a writer. So I started off in Twitterland and built up a community on Twitter. Yes, we eventually ended up on Facebook and LinkedIn and Instagram as well, but we started on Twitter. And that's because that's where a lot of our target audience was. And it fit in with what I was capable of doing. I hadn't at the time hired other people. So I stuck with what I could do myself. And that's an important part of if you're going to be doing your own marketing. Where are you comfortable? And where will you invest the time? I invested it on Twitter.
Great. That's I think that was a perfect answer to the question because the imaging as creators, video is now where you want to, a good video that you can present to people tells, especially if you can't tell the story itself and you've gotten a good video done by it. We got another last question here again is that the budgeting for PR and marketing by if it's a company that's bootstrapped, if it's funded, is there any do you put aside again if I don't want to say money's no object, But how do you get started? How does if someone was to call you tomorrow, which I hope
Mhm.
somebody does, I hope somebody calls you every day
Please don't.
and says,
Make sure your
I
product's
just
okay
received
first.
this funding and I have to start creating a marketing plan.
Mhm.
What should first did they prepare to talk to you with? What should they get ready? And and I know it's hard to talk numbers, but is it
Oh, I have no fear of talking numbers.
okay?
Okay.
Great.
All right. So I will tell you all that most PR firms want between ten and $15,000 a month to do your PR. Okay. That's an outrageous amount of money for a startup. If you have that much money, you should hire an internal person who will do nothing but focus on your business. All right. So public relations firms 10 to 15K. No, it's just too much for a startup to bear. I mean, a lot of the clients that we work with, yes, they are spending several $1,000s a month. And it just depends on kind of where they are as a company and what it is we're trying to accomplish.
Mm-hmm.
Have very specific goals. Work backwards from the goals. If you need to sell 100 widgets, how many people need to look at that website page before they buy? If 100 people need to look at the page before they buy, that means your website needs to have 100, what is it? 100 times 100, 100,000 people? No, 10,000
Thousand.
people. I don't know. Math. But it has to have a lot of people that come to your website before you're getting enough sales. So if I have to put an ad on Google AdWords in front of 1 million people, what's that going to cost? If I have to create a tweet and only one out of every 15 people clicks the link to come to your website, you're going to pretty quickly figure out what you need to do and what you need to budget to have these things happen. So the more specific you can get about your business goals, the better off we can determine your marketing goals and what that kind of thing is going to cost. And I will tell you, I have worked for $1 billion companies. Both Cognos and PTC were $1 billion companies. And I never had all of the marketing budget I wanted. And neither did any other person in the company who worked in marketing because they were not interested in marketing. They don't need marketing, they have salespeople. Well, the salespeople, as soon as they laid off all the 259 marketing people, were hurting for leads and
Yeah.
website and product collateral and all kinds of stuff to support the sale. So you really want to think about what it is you're trying to accomplish and assign a cost per lead. So you're going to figure out approximately how much each lead is going to cost you and how many of those leads you need to have before you close a sale. Great
Okay.
thing about doing all this stuff online these days is you do get real numbers. It's
Right.
fantastic. We always used to have to guess how many people read that magazine. I don't know. How many people looked at that ad on that page? I don't know. It's a piece of paper. Who knows? But now you can see how many people are on your website. You can see how many people are in your social media. I know not only how many people follow me on Twitter, I know how many people click on things that I tweet. I know how many times they visit my profile page. And I know from Google Analytics how many of those people end up on my website. Such good data.
Yeah.
And what you're going to do is you're going to use that data to figure out, what the top of your sales funnel needs to look like. And that will tell you how much budget you need to get to the right sales.
Bobbie, I want to thank you very much. Invaluable information for our group and beyond. Everyone, thank you for attending tonight. Please visit Bobbie's website, uh, Bobbie Carlton PR Marketing. Did I get that right?
It's just
Through
Carlton,
Carlton Mark.
carltonprmarketing.com.
carltonprmarketing.com. Please check out the website. I know if you have any questions as you build out or anything, please give Bobbie a call. Bobbie, I really appreciate your time. I really do.
Good luck, everybody. This is not easy stuff.
No.
Definitely also check out Forge if you're looking for free manufacturing resources.
I think they're close to the UMass now in
They
Lowell.
have 3 offices, one in Merrimack Valley, one in Western Mass, and then one in Somerville.
Right. Excellent stuff. Bobbie, thank you very much. Everyone, thank you very much. If you have any questions, just shoot me an email. Bobbie, I'll be in touch.
All right. Take care.
All right. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone. Thank you very much for attending. Shirley.